Okay, so over the last years, I've lost well over 60 kilograms. I've went from being a very fat guy to no longer being a fat guy. I've went through a lot of different diet phases and fat loss phases, and I've also went through and put myself through 2 different photo shoot preps. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to going from that guy to that guy, especially when it comes to nutrition. Because I don't know about you, but for me, growing up, I was a bit of a bigger guy, and also for me, food was always something that when I was going through this process, through this journey, I really struggled. So not just number one, overeat all the time, and number 2, actually stay consistent. But what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to be breaking down actually what happens and why you struggle to stay on track, why you struggle to stay consistent, what's actually happened when you're going off track, and how can we actually begin to almost reverse engineer it and work towards a better progress so that in the future, when you're in a diet phase, when you try to drop some weight, you don't have those same issues. So the first thing we're going to cover is your actual mindset approach. So one of the issues that I guarantee that you're having right now is that you look at yourself as somebody who can't stay on track, because you've probably tried to diet before and you've probably got to a certain level, you've probably dropped a little bit of weight, but then something's happened. You've had a weekend away, you've had an off-plan meal, and you've hit the fuck up button, which is basically where you go, I've already ruined my diet, what's the point? And then you take that little tiny bit that you've went off track and you just blow it up into this, okay? The issue is that you don't see yourself as somebody who can actually stay on track. So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to start actually changing how you are mindset wise. That's not even the right phrase. You have got to change how you are looking at this mentally. Because if I tell you 100 times you are somebody who can stay on track and be consistent and not fuck your diet, you're going to believe it. But if I tell you 100 times, yeah, you know what, you're not going to do it. You just cannot stay consistent. This is not for you. Getting in shape is not going to be who you are. You're probably not going to do it. And the latter is what you are telling yourself. Now look, what I'm about to say and the other ones are going to very much help with this, because it's almost going to give yourself proof that, hey, I can do this. But one of the best things that you can actually do starting right now is actually just telling yourself that, you know what, I can fucking do this. I can stay on track. Yeah, of course I can fucking stay on track. The next thing we're going to be covering is this notion, this idea that you have to just be perfect all the time. And honestly, that is absolute crap. Now, what I will say is that with social media and with the, let's call it the generation that we live in on social media and Instagram with fitness, is that it's almost sometimes being pushed too far the other side, where people are like, it's okay if you go off track every single weekend, just get back to it Monday. It's okay that you can never stay consistent, but at the end of the day, it's not. However, you have this notion that when you're going into a diet, when you're going to drop some body fat and drop some weight, you have this notion that you have to be absolutely clean, perfect, don't miss a calorie, don't miss a beat, have absolutely everything spot on. And if you don't, then you're going off track and you've ruined it, so you're not going to make any progress. What I'm not saying is allow yourself just 2-3 days a week where you just don't really do the shit that you need to do. What I'm saying is you are not a bodybuilder, so stop trying to eat like one. You don't have to just eat boring, bland, basically unenjoyable foods just because it hits a protein and calorie target. You are going to have some perfect days. You're going to have some days where your nutrition's bang on, training's went well, you've had a great day, you're feeling fantastic. They're going to happen, but they're not going to happen all the time. So get that out of your head. At the end of the day, as long as you can safely say, today I done everything that I could to push myself in the right direction, that's all you can do. Literally, that is all you can do. Then we're going to go into something that is very close to my heart, and that is binge eating and overeating. And we're going to speak about the actual psychology behind that and what is actually causing it. For the record, binge eating is generally where you will start to eat something and then you generally feel quite emotional, and then you will just eat and eat and eat to the point where you feel like almost sick, where you potentially are sick, where you feel so unbelievably full that you literally cannot move and you genuinely feel like you have no control over what you're doing. So I can guarantee that when there's been times in your life where you've been binge eating and then because of the binge eating you've went off track and you've went, for fuck's sake, I've ruined my progress, what's the point? I'm just gonna have to go all the way back to the start, or I'll just start again next week, even though it's only Wednesday. But because you've already ruined the week, you're not going to be able to properly do it, so you'll just start again next week. I know it, I've been there, and I know that you've been there. So when it comes to binge eating, I guarantee that whenever you've went through that in the past, something has happened in your life on that day which has caused you to feel stressed, anxious, frustrated, sad, angry, any one of those stress emotions. Now what often happens in that situation is when your stress is elevated, so any one of those emotions that I just said, your cortisol is also raised. Now your cortisol is the stress hormone. And that's when you go into that feeling where you're panicking, you're like, oh my God, oh my God. And one of the first things you're thinking about is, I just want to eat snacks. I just need biscuits. Oh my God, I'm stressed all day. Have some crisps or biscuits. What's actually happening is that when your body, the level of cortisol, the stress hormone increases, your body and your brain hates that. It does not want that. Your body and brain doesn't want to be in a state of panic and stress. It wants to feel comfortable. So the best way for your body and brain to feel like that is to get dopamine. And that's the best way to almost try and balance out, and that's what they want. Now, ways that you're gonna get dopamine are through doing a great workout or going for a run or something that just makes you feel like, oh my God. However, you do also get the quick hit dopamine from foods. Generally speaking, sugary foods, sweet foods, because the sugar levels actually help increase a spike in dopamine. And that's why when you're feeling stressed, angry, frustrated, whatever it may be, you've never sat and thought, I really want some broccoli. But what your brain doesn't understand is it doesn't think about the after effect. You feel shite, you binge, you feel even worse after it. This part here, your brain is not thinking about that when it's here. So we've basically got part 1, which is the emotion, part 2 is the binge, and part 3 is the regret after the binge. Right now, when you're at part 1, your brain's only thinking about how can we distract you and get you to part 2. Because when you're binge eating, when you're actually eating foods, you are temporarily distracted from whatever made you emotional in the first place. Your brain is just looking for how can we make you feel a bit better as soon as humanly possible. So that's what they're thinking about. So what I want you to start doing is I want you to start thinking about what in your life is actually causing you these emotions. Is it something in your work? Is it something within your family, within your friends? What in the world is actually making you feel that way? Because when you can begin to actually work on that, or maybe work around it, or maybe, face it head on and try and essentially cut it out of your life or reduce it in your life, what you're then going to do is you're then going to work on the urge. And when you can work on the urge, you're going to then potentially avoid the trigger. And the trigger is what actually causes you to binge. Now, moving on and adding something that could probably be connected to the binge eating is the fact that you always just have snacks in your cupboard. When we grew up, it was very common that you would just have, the biscuit cupboard, the cupboard that had all the goodies in it. Now, the issue is that when you're trying to diet and you're trying to drop some weight, you and I both know that having crisps and sweets and chocolate is not going to be the most beneficial. Now, I'm not trying to say you can't have them at all, because I literally just said you don't have to have this notion that you need to be perfect all the time. However, you and I both know that it is easier to, stay on track, hit your protein, calorie goals, fruit and veg goals, if you're reducing the amount of crisps, sweets and chocolates that you're having. So one of your issues is that you've still got them in the cupboard just because. And the idea that you can't have them in your cupboard is not really something you've approached. But if you and I think about it, when you're having a bad day, not even binge eating, but just when you're bored, it's 9, 10 p.m, you're watching something, you're just looking for a bit of in those times, you're not usually actually hungry, are you? Or you might be because you're potentially not eating enough food, enough protein. But generally speaking, you're not actually hungry for the crisps or the biscuits. You're just bored. So what I actually started to do was I just started removing them. I just stopped buying them. Because if I really wanted a chocolate bar or some crisps, then I would actually be forced to have to go to the shops to get them. And guess what happened? I very, very rarely ever wanted to go to the shops. So I didn't go to the shops. So I ended up just sitting there, just doing whatever I was doing. And guess what? That hunger that I thought I had for the snacks, it went away. So one of the best things that you can actually do is if you know that you are quite a snacker person and you struggle with sometimes staying away from that cupboard, just stop buying them. Just literally stop having them in your cupboard at all. Okay, so next we are going to go on to your sleep intake, because that is something which has a much bigger impact on your going off track, your cravings, your hunger levels, and your ability to stay consistent than you've probably ever realized. Obviously, we all know that you want to be getting a good amount of sleep. Just it's obviously a human rule, you want to be getting a good amount of sleep every night. I always would recommend 7 to 8 hours is in that sweet spot. When it comes to hunger, you've got two hormones, okay? So you've got ghrelin and you've got leptin, and these are two hunger hormones in your brain. Now, ghrelin is essentially the hormone in your body which tells the brain that it is, the appetite's increasing and it's getting hungrier. Leptin is the hormone in the body which tells your brain, and therefore the body, that it's actually getting fuller. It feels more full, it feels less hunger. Now, what happens when you are lacking sleep is the level of ghrelin increases and the level of leptin decreases. So what's happening now is your body and brain are thinking that it is a lot hungrier than it actually is. and the thing that's making it feel like it's full is actually reduced. So for example, it could be a Monday, and then you're going to have 2 days of terrible sleep, and then on the Wednesday, for some reason, you are so unbelievably hungry for food, for snacks, and even though you're eating the same meals as you were 2 days ago, they're not filling you up. You don't feel full. You're like, oh my God, I just want snacks, I just want more food, more food. That is a big part probably because of your sleep. And I know, and you know, that in your 20s, your probably sleep schedule is probably not the best it should be right now. You're probably on your phone quite late at night, probably doom scrolling. The first thing that you do in the morning is probably waking up and going on your phone. So even though you're saying, oh yeah, I get 8 hours of sleep per night, you're probably not actually, because you're probably going to bed, chilling on your phone for a couple of hours, and then you're maybe taking another hour to actually get sleep. So what you're probably getting is actually about 5 to 6 hours. And 5 to 6 hours consistently is going to be fucking with your ghrelin levels and your leptin level. So a big thing is really fucking get on top of your sleep, and I guarantee that it will genuinely make a difference to the level of cravings that you have. Now we're going to move on to the stuff that I would say is probably the simplest things that you can literally start doing right now. So first of all, we're going to go for a lack of protein. If you are not already aware, protein is probably one of the single most important things that you will ever do within your diet if you're trying to lose some weight or drop some body fat or whatever it may be. Now, a lot of people obviously say protein for muscle, like you don't maybe fully understand what it is. Now, yes, from a muscle retention and muscle recovery standpoint, it's obviously very, very beneficial for that. And obviously over time, it helps with building muscle. However, when it comes to hunger, protein is more satiating. So essentially, protein actually takes longer to digest for your system than carbs and fats. So if you have 100 grams of chocolate, okay, and you have 100 grams of chicken, the chicken is going to take far longer to digest. Now obviously that's quite a, one extreme to another example comparison, chocolate and chicken, but to give you a bit of perspective. So what happens is with protein, when it stays in your system for longer, it's going to be there for longer. So therefore it's going to keep you fuller for longer, which is why one of the worst things that you can do if you're trying to drop a bit of body fat and you're trying to stay on track is consistently lack protein over your meals. Now, I would always say that you should be aiming to have around 1.7 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So if you are somebody who weighs 90 grams, if you weigh 90 kilograms, I would be looking for you to have probably anywhere from about 165 to about 180 grams of protein per day. Now, in another video, I'll go through how to actually break that down, because when you hear that number, 180 grams, oh my God, that's so much. It's not actually when you break it down, but a lot of the issues that you people have is that you're not having it in the morning, so then you're leaving all for your lunch and dinner, which is where you really, really struggle to hit it. But again, that's something that we can go into in another video. But you do really want to be keeping on top of your protein intake, because a lot of the times why you feel that snacking hunger, those cravings at about 10 a.m. and then about 4 p.m. and then usually about 9 p.m. is it's because the main meal, breakfast, lunch and dinner that you've had, in between those snacking, spikes, because it's been lacking in protein, and that's going to have a big impact on that. Then we're going to go on to a lack of fiber. Now, this is something that is even less spoken about, and with all the crap that you see on Instagram about fat loss and calories and calories and calories, there's not nearly enough spoken about fiber. Now, fiber is generally what you get from things like fruit and veg and beans. There's fiber in a lot of foods, okay? Now, when you naturally think about fiber, if you've got much knowledge of it, usually its main purpose is spoken about for the benefit of digestion and gut health, and I'm not taking that away. It is massively important for that, and if you're somebody who constantly feels like you may be struggling to go to the toilet and you constantly feel bloated, male or female, then I promise you that your lack of fiber is probably a big impact on that. Now, as a rule of thumb, I always say that you generally want to be having about, if you're a female, probably about 25 grams per day minimum, and if you're a guy, probably closer to about 35 grams. Now, we're just going to be looking at this though purely from a perspective of nutrition and staying on track and not snacking too much and overeating. Now, with fiber actually, when you consume fiber, it actually turns into an almost gel-like substance and it fills up in your stomach. What that does is it essentially, well, if it's filling up your stomach more, there's going to be less room in the stomach, so the stomach's feeling more full, so you're not having the same I feel so snacky. When it comes to how to get more fiber in, so the simplest ways are, I always say things like broccoli, brilliant. Brussels sprouts, which I know are a bit of a contentious because most of us, including myself, don't really like them. But if you do, have plenty of them. My best way of getting them fiber though is always through berries and fruit. So I generally try and have fruit at least once every single day. And the benefit of blueberries and strawberries and even raspberries as well is that you can get them frozen at shops for a really good price. Blueberries especially, the calorie to volume ratio is out of this world, and then you can have so much of them for not that much calories. And what it actually does is, yes, it's going to then be creating the gel-like substance, it's going to be keeping you more full. It actually makes meals bigger as well, because another way that you get fibre in easily is through greens, so like salad, leaves, lettuce, rocket, things like that. So if you're thinking about it, if you're having a meal which is higher in protein than your usual meals, and it's got more, maybe like a big salad with it, I guarantee that that meal there, say if that's your lunch for example, that's going to be keeping you full for quite a few hours. Instead of whatever you're having right now, which you're having at lunchtime, and then you get to 3 p.m, 4 p.m, and already you're snacking again, or you're thinking about snacking again, and the cravings are high. And it's because you've just not given yourself these two fucking critical parts, which is fibre and protein. So I promise you that these two especially, if you start putting them as a main focus into all three of your main meals, you will not only feel the need to snack less, but you will just snack less, and you will just stop overeating as much in between your meals. Another one that's not actually spoken out very much is a lack of water intake. Now, again, something that we're all brought up to, you know, be taught by our parents is you got to make sure that you drink plenty of water. It's good for you. And I always used to, you know, remember that when I was starting this out a few years ago, like going to the gym, losing weight, blah, 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 I remember thinking that, like my first ever coach saying, you know, water intake. And I realised one day, I was like, okay, but what do they actually mean? Like, how's it actually impacting me, okay? Again, we're just gonna be looking at it from a perspective of going off track and not overeating and not over snacking and things like that, okay? So with water, the way I want you to think about it, really, really simply, do you know when you've been on a night out and you wake up in the middle of the night or the next morning and your mouth is so unbelievably dry and you're like, oh my God, give me a glass of water? Or when you wake up in the morning in general and you have a big pint of water. What do you feel as soon as you've had that pint of water? You feel full. You do. Like, not literally as in, oh my God, I can't eat for hours now, but your stomach does feel full. Of course it does, because you've just had 500 millilitres of water, or even a litre potentially if that's what you're having, which I do have in the morning. You feel full. Now, I always say that it doesn't matter if you're a 50 kilogram female or a 110 kilogram male, a minimum water that you should be having per day, I always say, is about 2 to 2.5 litres per day. And if you're training and you're fairly active, that should be like 3 plus. But for a lot of people, you're just not drinking enough water. I've got clients that will regularly tell me when they sign up with me and we do an assessment week, which is basically before I initially give them their full nutrition plan, I will see what they're eating and drinking just now. And some days they're having 500 mils of water. Sometimes they're having like a small bottle or maybe like 1 glass of water per day. And then they wonder why they're feeling hungry. And I'm not trying to say that by drinking more water, you're just never going to feel hunger again, or you're never going to feel a craving again in your life, but it will help. Because for me, the way that I think about it is that you should be having 500 mils to a litre of water in the morning, like one of the first things that you do. And then you should be taking like a big sort of like, I don't use them personally, but like a big like bottle of like a litre to a litre and a half of water to work with you. Or if you work from home, have it by your desktop, okay? And then that should be getting consumed throughout the morning. And then there should be another one in the afternoon section. And then potentially maybe even a little bit more in the evening. And what that does is it just gives you that little bit more of a feeling of full. So what I hope that you're realizing now is I hope that you're realizing all these things combined. So right now you're probably lacking protein, so your food's digesting quicker and you're feeling hungrier quicker. You're not getting enough fiber, which is similar to the protein, but it's more in the sense that you're not getting any feeling of fullness, okay? So we've got the lack of protein, we've got the lack of fiber, and now we've got the lack of water intake. So if you're doing all three of them pretty much regularly every single day, you are missing out on so much from your meals, and obviously water as well. That is meaning it's going to be obvious that you're going to be overeating, you're going to be going off track, because you are just genuinely fucking starving quite often. And then when you're starving, you're not thinking about, oh, I'm hungry, I'm going to make sure I get a main meal. You're thinking, I feel quite snacky just now. And then this happens time and time and time and time again. And it is these things which are actually causing you to actually go off track and make the diet and the fat loss go so much slower. We're then going to move into the weekend, and this is a big one. And your issue is that there is zero or very little planning or preparation for the weekend. Now, how many times have you been on track Monday, Friday, been doing great, hitting your calories, steps, gym, weight's coming down, you're feeling class, you're like, this has been such a good week, I feel like I've won this week. And then the weekend happens, and whether or not you have plans, you seem to just completely go off track, whether it is drinking or food. You get to Sunday morning or Monday morning, your scale weight is fucking shot right back up, and you are raging, and you end up hitting, and I'm just gonna add this here, you end hitting the fuck it button. And the fuck it button is something that you're probably hitting on this Sunday. So a very common thing that will happen is you'll have a social plan of some sort on the Saturday. It could be anything. It could be a meal out, it could be a night out, it could be day drinking, anything which means that you are most likely going to be, over consuming calories for the day and probably eating or drinking stuff that you wouldn't normally have if you were on plan. And what happens is you do that, okay? So either in the moment when you're doing those things, you're thinking subconsciously, right, well, I'm already doing this just now, so I mean, what's the fucking point? I've already sort of like ruined today anyway, so I may as well just do what I want. So then maybe a couple of drinks turns into 10 drinks, and a little meal out turns into a 3-course dinner, and then chocolate on the way home. And then what happens is the next day, your scale weights maybe went up a little bit. And let's call this day Sunday. Your scale weights went up a little bit. Maybe potentially you're a little bit hungover, or you're a little bit tired. So then your emotions are going to be a bit higher. And then you combine that with the scale weight going up, and you're fuming, and you're like, oh, I feel fucking terrible. I just feel like I just generally ruined the week. Fuck's sake, I'll just get back to it tomorrow. And then you wait until Monday. So then what's happened is what should have just been potentially a 3 to 4 hour social event of like I said, a meal out, a night out, has now turned into essentially 48 hours of you just making poor decisions. And it's not even the after effects of it as well. Because what often happens is when you know that you've got an upcoming social plan at the weekend, you almost just think to yourself, right, well, I'm going to be going off track. I'm not going to be able to track my calories, so I don't really need to be on it. So I could just relax the full weekend. So again, one few hour event turns into you basically allowing yourself 72 hours of, I can treat myself this weekend. I've worked hard this weekend, so I'm just going to have lots of treats and reward myself and, indulge a bit more and enjoy my food. And then I'll get back on track and I'll lock in on Monday. You're just completely fucking yourself over. So when you're going off track at the weekend, you need to prepare. You need to be thinking about, right, well, if I'm going out for dinner on the Saturday night and I'm going out for drinks, well, I need to make sure that potentially I have a bit of a lower calorie breakfast and lunch, or maybe I skip breakfast and just have a bit of one big brunch. What am I thinking about as well? Make sure that I'm hitting my protein target for the day before I go out, because I'm probably not going to hit it at the meal out or the drinks. Make sure that you get activity done in the morning of the day of the event. Get to the gym in the morning on the Saturday. I'm just using Saturday because it's the most common day for a social event. Get to the gym on the Saturday morning. Go out for a walk. Hit your steps. Generally don't really do much different on that Saturday morning than you would do Monday, Friday. And then when it comes to Sunday, don't just treat it as a day to be like, and then just basically sit your arse on the couch all day. The biggest issue that you're having with the weekend is that you've got a certain structure Monday, Friday, which gets you results, which keeps you consistent, which means that the weight's coming down, you feel in control, you feel good. You've got this structure and plan here. You know it, you're comfortable with it, you're used to it, you know it works. Saturday, Sunday, nada. Why does it have to change? I'm not trying to say you've got to live the same life 7 days in a row, but the issue is that you're not taking any of the stuff that works Monday, Friday, and you're carrying it over to Saturday, Sunday. Because Saturday, Sunday, you're not prepping food. You're not thinking, I'm going to be at the gym at this time. You're thinking, well, I've got more time off, so I'll just make sure I get to the gym at some point this weekend. And I've not prepped any food, but I'll just pick up something at the shops. You wouldn't be doing that Monday, Friday, because you'd be thinking, right, I'm in my routine. I need to be making sure that I'm prepping my food and I'm getting to the gym at that time. You've just got a completely different mindset to the weekend as you do to the week, and that's what needs to change. So if we're going to go through them, all these things here, if you begin to work on these, you are going to go off track less, you're going to stay more consistent with your diet, you're going to make more progress short term and long term. So number one, we had the mindset approach. You have got to start looking at yourself and telling yourself that you are somebody who can stay on track and stay consistent, and you're not just going to, completely go fucking off the rails if you go a little bit off track. You don't have to be perfect all the time. Stop getting it into your mind that you have to eat perfectly and not miss a single calorie or go over by a single calorie. And if you do, then you've completely ruined your progress and you're going to have to wait until next Monday to start again. Binge eating. Understand the emotions. Understand the cause. Understand the urge. Because what's causing it is going to be causing the urge. When you know the urge, you can know the trigger, And when you can work on and beat the trigger, well, you're not going to have the trigger, so you will binge eat less, because you'll understand that it's not actually about the food. Binge eating has got fuck all to do with food. It's about your emotions. So understand your emotions better. Having snacks in the cupboard all the time. Do you need them? No. How often do you have them out of just sheer boredom? Quite often. Okay. Get better self-control. Stop having them in the cupboards. And if it's 9 PM and you're watching a movie and you really are that desperate for a snack, fucking walk your arse to the shop and get one. Your sleep intake, 7 to 8 hours. If you're getting less than that consistently, you're going to be feeling more hunger and cravings than you normally actually should do. Lack of protein, lack of fiber, and lack of water intake. I'm going to say those three as a trifecta together, because those are the three things that you can literally start improving on today, which are going to keep you feel more full after your meals, more full for longer after your meals. You're not going to be feeling the same snacky cravings and hunger within 2 meals of your main meal. And the more and more that you do that, you're going to actually really like the feeling of not wanting to snack all the time and go off track. When it comes to your weekend and the fuck it button, you just need to start looking at it differently from Monday, Friday. No, that's a lie. You need to stop looking at it differently from Monday, Friday, because at the end of the day, Saturday, Sunday are just 2 more days. These things here, I've had to work on a lot. All of these over the past few years, but like I said, 60 kilograms plus I've lost over these past few years. I've went from being a very overweight guy to now a guy who coaches men and women to work on this exact stuff every single day. If you're somebody who's always been a bit maybe out of shape, a bit overweight, or maybe you're just somebody who's always been wanting to be a bit leaner, but you've never seemed to get there because you can't seem to find that consistency, I guarantee that the answer to your issues is somewhere within there. Please do give a like and subscribe to the video. I hope that you enjoyed this more educational whiteboard style video. I've fucking loved doing them. They're so much better than the short, basically the short shit Instagram stuff. But yeah, drop me a little subscribe, and if you would like to see me go through in detail any other topics that you're potentially struggling with, drop a comment below and I will see you in the next video.